Welcome to
Bean Stuff.
Today we are talking about cupping.
Oh, it's a great topic.
And I will warn you, this is going to be a multi-part series. We're still working on how many parts because I think you and Dad had talked about we could cup for years.
You do. I have cut for years and I've had so much experience. It's like I've been to so many courses on it. You can go as deep as you want.
You really can. So to start off with a basic question that I think has an infinite amount of answers, and we could talk for hours, but what is cupping? Is kind of the... Let's get into it, yeah.
What is cupping? It's a strange... Having been in it for years, I think, cupping, it's obvious what that is. Someone's going, what are you talking about? Cupping. Something to do with cups, obviously.
Right.
But the important thing of cupping is you're thinking.
Thinking.
And when I say that, in the cup, you're going to put some dry coffee grounds in there.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about proportions soon. and even before you put the water on, which was what we typically do with a cup of coffee, we're going to start smelling those grounds and we're going to start thinking about those grounds. And that's where you stop and you say, let's think.
And I mean, so many times when we're drinking coffee or other things or eating really anything, we don't really slow down for a whole lot of that. We spend a lot of time consuming and not a lot of time thinking. And I think we had talked about it. Well, we talked about it before the podcast. It's kind of a sensory ceremony as far as we are taking steps that we go through a process and we're doing that, and it's something we're slowing down, where we're really taking the time to understand our coffee and taste the flavor of it.
Yeah, we're not good at doing that. As you say, other forms of life, we just go so fast.
Right.
And I've, in a sense, with my coffee experience, I've been forced to slow down because we're going to be talking about this in a moment about buying coffee, and you don't want to buy the wrong stuff because it's expensive when you get a whole container of 250 bags. So you need to think about what you're buying. So I've been forced into a way, and then being a roaster, I've realized there's two parts. There's a lot of parts to being a roaster, but one, you roast the coffee in the machine, and the second part goes hand in hand. You must cup the coffee. There's that word again.
Yeah. Well, and I would say a warning is: do you think that cupping will almost ruin, maybe ruins a tendency? It connotates bad things, but it'll ruin the way you drink coffee. In a sense, like you'll start thinking about what you're drinking when you're not cupping more.
That's right. And that's very true. And you're right in a good sense. And I said good sense. You are going to be ruined in a good sense because you will start knowing differences in coffees. You'll start knowing different language. You'll be able to talk about coffee in a way that's understandable to someone else in Ethiopia or just in the town next door. It suddenly expands stuff, and you are ruined because now you find it hard not to talk about what you're tasting, and you got words to it, and people going, you sound a bit nerdy. Well, you are in a good sense.
And even when you and I have gone out for coffee, which we don't do as often as some might think.
Why is that?
Because it's hard to compete with what we have at home. But I mean, I guess another reason is because when we go out, oftentimes it's hard to ignore really tasting the coffee. And obviously we always taste it when we're drinking it, but it's hard for us to not go somewhere and try to evaluate what we're tasting, and you and I will notice it or something, and we might say, ooh, this is not good, or we might say, hey, this is really good, we'll come back here.
And that's the good part of it, that you're going to get both going on. You're going to get this is horrible, this is good. But as you say, that word ruined again, we have a sense we are not going to just taste coffee, we're going to taste bad coffee and go, yuck, don't want to drink that.
And it's an education as well. It's learning. And I think that kind of goes into my next question, at least, is why do we cup? And I think a large reason we cup is because it gives us a commonality. If you and I are talking about coffee, we can talk with different words or different descriptions, and we can have a common understanding. And we'll get into that more into other episodes, but there is, professionally at least, there's a lot of protocol to cupping in the process.
And we're going to be talking about this as we keep saying it, because it's such a big topic. But professionally, there's a lot going on there. But the nice thing about you can take that professional and bring it home and just make a light version of it.
Right.
But you will have the exact same benefits, social, fun. It's all there when you start actually thinking about the coffee and you hear someone say a word, you go, whoa, it may not even be the right, maybe whatever word,
Right.
dirty windows. And you're going, what are you talking about? And you start talking about that and you start to think again. And you have this commonality with this friend who just came around to have a drink of coffee and said, why don't we just cup this coffee first? Let's just think about what we're going to drink and then we do whatever we're going to do today. But and suddenly you've involved them in yourself in this process, and you suddenly enjoy not only drinking coffee, but you enjoy thinking about coffee.
I think of it like music. You can do music professionally, and there's a lot of structure to that. Sometimes there's not, but there's structure as far as what chord, what timing are we playing. And if you're playing in a band, there's a common structure involved. Whereas cupping can be similar if you're doing it professionally or you're doing it. For instance, Golden Bean is going on this week, so everybody cupping there is working under a lot of the same principles and everything like that. But you can also bring home music, and you can play guitar with your friends at home or do something like that, and it's a lot more relaxed. And that's, I think, like cupping. You can adapt what is done professionally to what you can do at home. And while it may not have the same strict or rigid structure, you can still gain something from it, and you can enjoy it.
We were just talking about before, you talked about Golden Bean competition here in Portland.
Right.
And what I like about that competition, other than it's run by Australians, is that you get a bunch of roasters together and they send their coffee in, and there's pluses and minuses to it. But when you get then everyone comes for this week. We've got the awards are tonight actually, but all the people who come are there's people who've never cupped before. There's people who've never thought to cup before. There's people who've done it for years, like myself. And here we are sitting around this table talking with each other, and we learn there's calibrating to start with, etc. But you suddenly hear words.
Right.
We cup at Caravan every week, and I love it when there's new cuppers. Not because I like it because they come with words I've never thought of. It's not as technical as what I've learnt. And but it's revelation. Like, wow, that's a good descriptive word. I had a guy sitting next to me yesterday with a cup, and he said, this coffee's pillowy. I go, what are you talking about? And we discussed what he meant by pillowy, and that gave me a new appreciation for the coffee we were tasting.
Yeah, and I think that there's always growth in that. There's always learning of new descriptions and flavors, and I think that for the home side of it is a big reason why cupping, if you're into coffee, why you may want to cup is because you may look for a specific flavor, or you may like a certain flavor and you want to find that in other coffees, and it can really help you hone in what coffee you're having and why you like it, that kind of thing. Whereas we were talking about it, and professionally, you might be looking for another coffee to fit in with another blend. You might be, I think one of the things that's interesting that we take for granted as a consumer is where coffee is grown is on planet Earth, but
good.
There's different years have different seasons can be different. We can have rains at different times. We have monsoons and too much sun. And so there's changes in the actual coffee that you get from the same region, same farm year to year. And so as a coffee, so for you as a roaster, you want to maintain consistency in your coffee.
Yep.
And so it's crucial to cup, because if you just use the same farm, you could get different coffee every single year.
It could be disastrous, which is what I was saying too before. When I roast coffee through the week, how I roast it,
right?
I may not know that the development stage was a little too long, too short. There was a staling process going. I could have done all sorts of things.
Right.
If I haven't cupped it, I won't have a clue, because if I go just with a color, that's just a very minor tool to find out what your coffee is like. You have to cup it to find out. This is now consistent, that word you were using, that the capstone that we have, one of our blends, we do 14 on one day, different blends of 25 pounds a time,
right?
And we find out, if we cup them, we say, oh, these are the same. And then next week we do it again, and say, it's the same as last week.
Yeah.
Which is another reason you need to have a pen and paper to write some of this down, because no matter really how good your memory is, you're going to forget what it
Right.
tasted like last year, for instance.
Especially if you're cupping a lot of coffee.
Yes.
And I think that's where it takes a large leap from consumption to cupping. You're not cupping because you are trying to, drink coffee. You're cupping so that you can then produce something that is consistent or has a certain flavor. So I think that's where there's a differentiation between subjective and objective. Because when you're cupping, it's not subjective cup. Like you may not be cupping for a flavor that you enjoy, right?
Yes.
Like if you're looking at a blend, you have to objectively cup to say, is this good coffee? I may not, may not be like, I may not like fruity acidic, but it is fruity acidic and it's good. And that's where it's almost like cupping is a language. I mean, cupping really is.
It is language.
Kind of like music. Two musicians from around the world can play together because music is a common language between them.
That's a good point. And a C, the note C,
Uh-huh.
is you've learned what that is on the piano,
Right.
and you know what it sounds like. You can even record it and get a feel for it.
Right.
And whether you're in Ethiopia playing a piano C or in Newburgh playing a piano C,
Right.
it's going to be exactly the same. And that is probably a good analogy of when we cup, we're trying to do just that. We're trying to get the same language going. So a C is a C, whatever country you're in.
Right. We've decided that this is the definition of that, which isn't language. I mean, and that's why when you do it professionally, there is so much, there's a strict protocol put in place so that we are all experiencing the same thing. So that when we use the word acidic, we're doing that based on the same types of tests and different things like that. And that can be a huge benefit, especially from roaster to roaster, that kind of thing. So there's so many reasons why we cup coffee.
Exactly.
But what do we cup?
Coffee.
Exactly. And I think the reason I ask it is because a coffee cupping, you can obviously cup things that are not coffee, but it's very similar to a wine tasting. And I'm not going to say it's the same, but I think at least where we are in the Pacific Northwest, specifically in Oregon, we've got a lot of good wine, and a lot of people take wine. If you go to a winery or a vineyard, you take it very seriously. You sit there, you smell the cup of wine, you sip it, you look at all the aromas, that kind of thing. And I think that it's an easy correlation to coffee for a lot of people, because again, taking it seriously.
And that's, I mean, what you cup, and I laugh and say coffee, obviously, but like wine, actually, like a lot of like cheese, like perfume, like a lot of things, there's differences. And how do you learn about those differences other than smelling, tasting, thinking, all these things?
Right.
And in coffee, we call that cupping. And that you actually discover that here is a Indonesian coffee, here's a Guatemalan coffee. We know they're different coffees, they're from a different origin. But what is it about them that is different? And sure, you're going to like one or the other more, which is the subjective, objective thing you were just talking about. And we're trying, and we will never be there in cupping coffee to move more towards objective rather than subject, just what my emotions and what I like is. And we're always going to be trying, and we'll never get there. But the more you can actually describe and talk about and just bring it down and down and down and say, okay, I don't like this Indonesian coffee, but when we go to the body of this coffee, it's like, that's really high. I give it a huge score for that. That's a plus. And this is therefore a good Indonesian coffee. And my job, that means, okay, we can look at buying this coffee because it's a good Indonesian coffee compared to other Indonesian coffees.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's another piece. Is it does have a large effect on, for professional side, what people are buying and that kind of thing. And also when you talked about the commonality, I remember you went to Ethiopia and did some cupping, and you could cup with other cuppers, and both your information that when you cupped and when they cupped, you could share that, and it was useful for each other because you're both kind of working on the same playing field, at least. So it is super helpful when we all speak the same language.
Yeah.
And I think when you're doing it at home, that's probably not less important, but it's not as crucial because you may be doing it for yourself. You may be just your own curiosity, that kind of thing. But I have, one of my questions, like, what are we looking for when we're cupping? And you really spoke to that pretty well when you said it affects, what you're buying. What are you looking for?
And another part of that, what we're looking for is the quality of it, not necessarily the flavor, which is part of the quality.
Right.
And here it gets huge at this point. In fact, we use a form that it sounds form. I don't like forms.
Sounds like work.
It is work because you're having to think,
right,
and not just what you feel like that day. And as I say, the next week you can come back and compare the 20 different Guatemalan coffees you had and see, I don't remember that one I had last week. Oh, but I gave it an 85, and this one I hear I only gave an 80. Why did I do that? Let's look at my form and see, it had a higher acidity or it had a higher balance score. And that score then gets translated into a more practical aspect of buying the coffee, obviously, because it has a quality. We go, wow, this is a better quality coffee.
Yeah, and I'm assuming people know this, but to clarify, it is roasted coffee that we're cupping. Right. And I think that the other aspect of it, what we're looking for is, again, I think this word comes up so often, but consistency. So you as a roaster, so Dad, when you're roasting, you want to make sure that what the product you're putting out is consistent. Is tasting the way you want it to. And I think of it like, companies that like pull, one piece of their product out of 1,000 and test that one to make sure it works. And it's a way to keep kind of some quality control on what you're putting out, as well as tasting what's coming in so that then you could put it out. There's that side of it too.
And there's that consistency of language, what you were talking about before too, that when a friend in Ethiopia says, this tastes like yak lagu, and I'm going, what are you talking? I don't know what are you talking about? But if we both say this is orange, and he's learnt through learning about what an orange is, even though they may not have them there, or vice versa, we may not have I can't even pronounce what I said, the glagaglu.
Yeah.
But because now we know what an orange is, suddenly we're on the same page, we're talking about the same thing, and when I buy the coffee, I know what I'm getting, he knows what he's selling to me, and everyone's happy.
And I think that's a good thing. It supersedes colloquial definitions, because even from New Zealand to the States, there's different names for the same thing.
A trunk, a boot. I mean,
very different things in both places.
Both going. What are you talking about? Well, we're talking about the end part of a car that you put stuff and you lift it up and let the back of the car.
Yeah, trunk's what's on an elephant.
There you go.
But I think that the whole terminology side is a very important piece of that. So I think, overall, what are we looking for? Consistency and how that affects that.
Yes.
And like we talked about with a professional cupping, there's so many different aspects. Quality, are you looking for body to add to a blend? Are you looking for consistency in the coffee you're producing? It affects your buying decisions, all that stuff. One of the things that we talked about was when you're cupping at home, some things that might be some reasons you may cup at home.
Right.
Would be, you may pick several different coffees that are all different, and you can cup to kind of differentiate the differences between them all, and kind of, it gives you a well-rounded palette or idea of what flavors you like. Or if you grab two coffees that are from the same region or the same, even the same farm, but roasted by different people, you can see, which one do I like better? And then you can also, I think you would suggest it's kind of fun is to cup against what the bag says it tastes like.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. Your roastery should be cupping their coffee, as I was saying. It's hand in hand. You can't do one without the other.
That's true.
And
that's for both sides, home and the roaster.
Exactly. Yeah. So when you go to buy your coffee, you can see what they've written there, and you know that when they say this word is juicy, or this one has got high body, or it's got a viscous sort of note to it, or you understand that, and that you know what you're buying there for.
Right.
And I was thinking too that it helps often when you're cupping, if you do two different countries, for instance, you do Indonesia and Guatemala I've been talking about, don't know why, but you may discover I've never had an Indonesian coffee before.
Right.
And you put them together. I've always had Guatemala. I've never not got a Guatemala. And you take the Indonesian and you go, wow, this is an amazing, why have I never heard of Indonesian coffee? Then you start saying, well, what area is this? And this is the Asia Pacific area in coffee. what other countries do coffee around that area? Papua New Guinea, Sulawesi. There's a whole lot of countries that you can say, I've never had coffee from those places before. I'm going to try those. And suddenly it's just opened up and you've got this whole huge area that you've never dealt with before, and it's got big.
Yeah, it can open up opportunity for a lot of coffees you may like that you didn't know before. It's like listening to different types of music. If someone says, I like Brazilian music, you go, well, what is that? And you listen to it and you go, oh, this is pretty good.
Yeah, I like that too. Yeah.
I think there's so many different ways it can be useful. And if you're home roasting too, you can say, hey, is what I'm making taste good? And you can even compare notes from different roasts or try different things and see how that affects your final product.
And which is, again, why it's good to write down, even when you're home roasting, to write some stuff down of timings and things, even though it's a bit of a pain. Unless you just, just want to get the coffee into you and you just want to roast it and do it quick. But if you do write it all down, you can actually then cup that coffee and then cup it the next day and say, whatever I did the day before was way better, and you don't have to guess what you did. You look down and say, oh, I started at this temperature and I went down to this temperature, I went this long, and I did this, there was a drop and all that sort of thing, and suddenly you've written down, and cupping's the same, you taste it, say, this is much better, let's go back to my roast now and say, what did we do well?
And I think the notes, and this is maybe getting off a little bit off topic, but Tim, one of our friends we had on an early podcast, roasting with him one time at home, he takes notes throughout his roast, at what times did things, crack, or what times are things at what temperatures, and that way he knows he can repeat that again. I think cupping's similar. It can help us.
Yeah. Which is sort of, in cupping, you want to do the same thing the same way every time, helping with their objectivity. So it's you're trying to cut out any, this time I did a lot more water compared to how much coffee I had in the cup, or I got a much bigger cup this time, or the temperature was way different this time. Why does this coffee not taste the same? Just because you didn't boil it or to the temperature to say it needed to go to, and that can change everything. So the more you can standardize and keep things the same, and therefore have a different coffee though, you can compare much easier across the board.
Absolutely. And I think it can also be fun too. If you have a group of, because oftentimes it's better in a group. You can cut by yourself, but if you have a group of friends coming over, if everybody likes coffee, it can be a fun thing to do. I know that we've done that with people who've come to visit or whatever. It's, we've done cuppings, and it can be an enjoyable.
It's very social. I had a friend, Mike, who, it was one of his birthdays, and I'm not sure when it was, but his wife very kindly rang me and said, could you come? I was coming to the birthday party anyway, and he says, I want to do a full cupping at his party. And I thought, okay, we can do that. And and it was interesting. There was about, 15 people there. And it was interesting getting different people's perspectives, and some didn't know what we're doing and didn't want to do it. But most people was sort of as a whole eye opener to this, and it was actually a lot of fun. We actually talked about stuff. Yeah. We didn't just sit in our little groups and do what we normally talk about. We had a focus, and it was most enjoyable. And some went away thinking, I've never thought to think about my coffee before.
Well, and if you get different perspectives, people are going to have different flavors, different names for different flavors that then, you go, oh yeah, it does taste like that. It's helpful. Yeah. So I want to look at the equipment real quick. What is all the cupping stuff look like? And we're not going to get into the nitty gritty necessarily. That's, again, we're going to do some more episodes on cupping. But just so that everybody kind of has an idea. And again, these are like professionally, like I think we have right over there, we have the Roasters Guild. We have some stuff from them that what they specify. And again, this is, professional cupping. Obviously everyone wants to cup the same with the similar or same equipment. So we're all basing what we're saying off of, a standard. And this can be adapted for home.
That's right. You don't have to have all that sort of equipment. I'm thinking too, a cupping professionally as a quality grader, a Q grader, we are called. Every 3 years, I have to go somewhere in the States and recalibrate to make sure I'm still saying and writing and thinking the same things as what my colleague is thinking in Colorado, wherever they may be. Yeah, and there's usually about 20 of us, and we 3 days we cut coffee, and we have to sit tests and make sure Indonesian I'm tasting is the same that he's tasting. We're both calling it Indonesian coffee, and it's a rigorous process, but it's actually really helpful to recalibrate, to make sure we're on the same page. And you do it with instruments, you recalibrate to make sure it's reading the same reading as it was yesterday.
Yeah.
And that's important.
Absolutely. The first one is not necessarily something you may think of immediately, but it makes sense, is you want it to be a clean and odorless space. So doing a cupping in a perfume shop is not optimal.
Probably not.
Because there is so much that is scent or smelling that affects the flavor. What is it, like 50% of taste is smell or
probably I'd go 70%.
Oh, I'll go 72.
It's actually 75, but anyway.
But it is important to be in a clean, odorless space so that we're not, confusing what we're smelling with other things. And that goes for, if you're in a place where you smell a lot of coffee too. You could smell a coffee that you're not cupping and it can throw you off.
Oh, yes. We have a public cupping every Friday at Caravan, and we don't have it as rigorous as I would when I was cupping out the back.
Right.
But people come, some have so much perfume or aftershave. It's like, this smells
it's
like...
effect.
Yeah, I'm all of something as the aftershave. I've had a few even come who perhaps should have had a shower or something in the last 2-3 weeks because the odor was just quite strong. So yeah, having a clean place is really... It sounds sort of odd, but no... Do it where you're not going to be confused. I heard once that actually perfume companies who do they don't call it cupping, obviously.
Right.
You don't want to drink perfume. It's probably not a good idea. But they actually use coffee. Between smelling the perfumes, they smell coffee to neutralize their smell.
Yeah. I've seen that at stores too. They'll have little cups of beans sometimes.
Yep.
And I think to go with that, also making sure that you're not chewing gum or affecting your flavor in what's in your mouth. Because, you chew mint gum and it's like when you do that, or it's like brushing your teeth and then drinking orange juice. It's like, full on.
Exactly.
So you want to make sure you're not already, affecting your palate.
Professionally, we make sure we do it in the morning for a start because that's a good time. Get to the afternoon, you're slowing down, you've got lots of taste going on in your mouth because you probably had lunch and the taco you had is spicy and it probably doesn't help.
Right.
So the morning is not a bad thing and you're more awake usually. But when we go, I clean my teeth with just the brush rather than toothpaste. I don't put perfume on. I don't put aftershave on, and I probably have a shower the night before. Just trying to neutralize as much as I can so that my fellow cuppers as well
are not affected by you.
Yeah, exactly. And so we're all trying to on the same page there again. So it sounds like we could do a whole podcast on cleanliness.
Another important, all of these are important, but is cups, all of them being the same size. Because I've got a cup here in front of me. If I use a cup like this and a cup twice its size, and we fill both with water, both are going to have a different water to coffee ratio. And as we talked about, like on our extraction episode a while back, it's going to change the flavor hugely. And it's just the dilution as well of just how much water is diluting my coffee.
Yeah, it's right. I'm just looking at my notes here. I've got the, you were talking about the Roasters Guild, the Roasters Evaluation Form Protocol, the beta version. This means it's the most up to date.
Oh my, the beta version.
Yep, 2015. It sort of says at the top there. But it's interesting. I just right here, it's got determining measurements, and you need to think about how big the cup is, therefore how much water does it go into it.
Right.
How much, therefore, coffee that you grind is going to go into it. This is here, the optimum, the best ratio is 8.25 grams of coffee per 150 mils of water. There you go. Just start there. Find a cup that's 150 mils or mark it in the cup. Fill the water up, put it on a gram scale, and it'll tell you it's 150 grams, which is nice in metric, where that's basically 150 mils. And you can see where the water needs to go. And then I'm going to put 8.25 grams and fill the water up to that point.
Yeah. And I think that's, it's again why we have a standard, because the more coffee you put in, the more it's going to extract,
Yes.
It's just, there is so much
changes
to it.
Yep.
So in that same standard, I'm reading in the notes I have on my computer here, but it's they say all the cups need to be the same, obviously.
When you say all the cups, professionally, we use 5 cups.
Fair enough. That's a good point.
And
5 cups per coffee.
per coffee. That's
Or
right. So
per thing you're cupping.
if we've got 2 coffees we're cupping that morning, it's the Indonesian coffee.
Yeah.
We're going to have 5 cups, and it's all going to have the exact same Indonesian coffee in those 5 cups.
Yeah.
Next to it, you can have another 5 cups, and it's all going to be the Guatemalan coffee, and it's all exactly the same put into those cups, and that's where the measurements become important. And we'll talk about the protocol of that later, I'm sure.
And it can help with consistency as well. If you have 5 of the same cup and you all taste the same, that's good.
If you put 8.25 in one, and the next one you put in 10.49, and the next one you put in 2.
Yeah.
Why does this taste so watery? It's got no body. Well, you've got different things going on.
Yeah. And so they say each cup should be able to, 7 to 9 fluid ounce cup with a mouth or opening of around 3 to 3.5 inches.
Yeah.
And we had talked about earlier, that's, the opening is going to change the way we smell or the scent. There was a cup that came out. I don't know, it probably still is out, but I remember at SCA, there was a cup that like the top of the cup, where we typically think of it flat, was like kind of tilted up.
That's right.
So one side of it was higher than the other, and basically what it did is you can kind of like stick your nose in it, and it would cup the flavor would get trapped, kind of an idea, and you could smell it better.
Yeah, I haven't seen too many of them as such since then, but the idea is good. I mean, what they're trying to do is keep things consistent, so you're just smelling, and you're not going to smell the room, whatever the smell going on. You're just smelling what's in that one cup.
Yeah, a good grinder, and that's, again, I would reference our grinder episode on why, but it's important that what we're grinding is consistent and that we have a good quality in our grind.
That's right. And
because again, that's going to change all of the extraction.
Exactly. And yeah, if you get a burr grinder, you can go more expensive burr grinder, and you make sure, therefore, in those 5 cups, it's almost exactly the same coffee, the same surface area, and every little piece of those grinds are exactly the same.
Yeah.
And in the grinder, part of that grinder, perhaps I'm getting on ahead of myself.
I think you're starting the old podcast up again.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I'll stop right there. No problem.
There's lots of good stuff for that episode. Something is also the table height, the ergonomics of the space. I know at Caravan you guys have a taller circular table.
Think like that. It's a bar sized, I think, table. It's comes up to towards your up to your chest there.
Like mid chest.
Yeah.
Well, I think the cool thing is with that, you don't have to bend over as far to smell the coffee.
Exactly.
So it's easier to smell it. A circle makes it easier to walk around.
Yep.
So there's
as long as you'll go the same way. We've had problems that way.
And there's some again, you don't have to have a circle table. It doesn't have to be.
And then you can go to the next stage and you can have a circle table with a little circle. I think they call them Lazy Susans.
Yeah, or the whole table can spin.
Or the whole table, so you stand still and let it go around. And
as long as you spin it when everybody's ready.
It doesn't hurt your steps for that day, but anyway.
Temperature of the room, being comfortable where you are, like you had said, Dad, when we were talking, is you might be there if you drink professionally for the whole day. So I think comfort, forms, pencils, having all the right equipment to record what you're tasting.
Yeah, it's even if a bit of paper at least, so you can write down some stuff. Otherwise, you're going to forget, and by the end of the day, you won't remember which coffee is which.
I've seen people with iPads and computers. There's some cool apps and stuff you can get to, and even if you just use the Note app on your phone.
Yep.
Anything
simple.
that can help you organize.
I've even gone to my Excel and made my own cupping forms up, and I've got hundreds of them. When I first started, before the computer was around, makes me sound ancient. I have a whole lot of cupping forms that I have files and files and files of cupping forms. Now it's nice on the computer. You can just tap and they're just all there, and you can go to which month you want or which coffee you want. That is really helpful. I find actually right now my phone I use that the most. And as you say, iPhone or Android, doesn't matter.
Yeah, there's good apps.
There's some really good apps out there.
Absolutely. Limited distractions is kind of another thing that might, that kind of makes sense.
Music in the background sounds, it sounds so nice and peaceful, but you want minimum. It's like almost, I would put it down to, it's almost like exam conditions.
That's a good way to put it. You can't have any distractions.
No, you're not allowed to have phones, calculators in an exam. You don't want them in cupping either.
I think about it even while I'm at work, as I'm, if I know what I'm doing, I'm typing something up. If I put music on, I kind of get all distracted and I start losing focus. And I think that's where that can, affect that as well.
Another, I don't know if we have in our notes here, but I'm also thinking a thermometer can be really helpful.
To make sure the coffee's the right temperature, or?
Yep, not the room, to find out what for sure. That's probably not a bad idea either.
Right.
But I'm thinking for the coffee itself, because when we cup the coffee, we're going to be looking at possibly doing it at 3 different temperatures, because that will change when you taste a defect or not taste a defect.
Yeah, and especially if you're looking to cup it at a specific temperature.
Which is the consistency again. So every time you cup the coffee, I do it at 203. It's the same for the Indonesian or the Guatemalan. I didn't do one at 90. And why does it taste odd? It didn't extract.
And I think that leads into time. Time is your frenemy. It's your friend because you need...
Frenemy.
It's your friend because you need time, or the coffee needs time to brew or extract. But if you let it go too far, so it's cooling a lot as time goes on, or even just if it's hot for a really long time, we're going to get, over extraction. It's not going to. So there's this time aspect as well where you want that to be consistent.
Which is one of it's one. I guess I was going to say it's a negative thing with coffee cupping. Once you start cupping, you start a timer and you can't stop. You can't sort of pause things like you can more in a wine tasting as such. Coffee, once you start, you've got to complete the whole thing. Otherwise, you'll need to start again all over.
Right, because with coffee cupping, you're putting the grounds in the cups, you're smelling the grounds, then you're pouring hot water over it, then you're smelling that as you break the crust, which we'll get into in another episode.
And the city, you're going to taste more when it's hotter rather than cooler, or vice versa. The body.
There's so many more variables with coffee.
Exactly.
It's not a finished product that's consistent.
Right. And again, that consistency, you start the clock and you're going to be consistent with every coffee you do, and you're going to wait 4 minutes, not 3.59. It's going to be 4 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely.
To be consistent. Have we talked about home, therefore? I mean, the light version, we
well, I think that these
you
are
adapt
the professional
to these things.
side, but you can adapt, obviously, to as high a level as you want, or as low a level.
I just think in my mind, rather than 5 cups, you may just have 1 cup.
The other thing is a scale, kind of as we mentioned, to make sure your measurements are accurate. A scale in grams is going to give you the accuracy. A lot of the specifications that we've gone through are, metric specific, so that's going to be hugely important.
It's actually interesting in the coffee industry. Metric is known to be the scale of preference, because it is more accurate, it's more precise.
Yeah.
I mean, and we do use 5-ounce cups and 6-ounce cups, but it's interesting here in the States, it's sort of a bit of both goes on.
Mixture, yeah. And
you say, oh, have a 5-ounce cup, but just 8.5 grams of coffee. And you've just got these 2 different measurements going on there.
Yeah.
But if I would for your own sanity almost, is keep it to one form scale rather than try and swap between the 2, because it gets hard to change.
Right. And spoons are important. And I think that it's something that makes sense. But you know what? Yeah. I will say that, but sometimes, if you've never cupped before, you may not know it.
No.
But when you cup coffee, I'll do an imitation on the video here for YouTube, but you basically take a spoonful of coffee.
Are you getting into the procedure?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Well, a little. I'll give him a teaser.
Okay.
But essentially, I'll do an imitation here.
Oh, it's not bad.
So you take the cup or a spoonful of the coffee, and you slurp it, and you as loud as you possibly can. We'll get into why. It splashes across your palate. All this wonderful stuff. But that's how you cup it, with spoons.
And that spoon, if you're doing it at home, I would say get a soup spoon.
Yeah.
That style is going to help with that slurp that you're talking about.
Yeah. And the material. What material are we looking for?
You don't think about it, but when you drink a cup of coffee, some like to have ceramic or stainless steel or glass and things. But when you're cupping coffee, we tend to talk about ceramic as the least amount of interference with the taste of the coffee.
For the cup.
For the cup, yes. For the cup, yes.
For the spoon,
spoon, it's similar. It's you want.
It's not ceramic, but
no. But having silver on the spoon really helps. Some have gold; it's more expensive.
Silver plated or gold plated are not going to affect the taste of the coffee.
Yeah. You can get a lot of spoons out there, but you will. It's subtle. But if you're going to do a lot of cupping, or you're going to start this journey, I would look at. It's not that expensive. Getting a good coffee cuppa spoon, and it has the right amount, it has the right depth. There's a whole lot of things that go into a cupping spoon.
Yeah, because I mean, you think about like a thermos that's made of metal can affect the flavor,
Exactly.
and you get that metallic taste. So I think ice cream testers use gold spoons
Oh, there you go.
because it doesn't add flavor to it.
And it's quite a status symbol too. If you go to a cupping
Pull out a gold spoon.
or go to someone's home and they say, we're going to cup some coffee, you pull out your own special cupping
Right,
spoon.
oh, yeah, well,
Everyone goes, whoa.
And that's just generally the parts or the pieces we're physically going to be interacting with and using. And I think, obviously those can be adapted if you don't have any, if you have the worst, taste adding spoon that you could possibly find, it's fine. Use it. I mean, it's practice. If you don't have everything immediately, it doesn't have to be perfect.
Even boiling the water, I would suggest having a kettle that automatically turns off. But a lot of people don't have that. It's just on the stovetop. That's hard to do. That's why you need the thermometer at that point.
Right.
Some have now kettles that you can set the temperature.
Yeah.
And that's brilliant for cupping because now you've got another consistent number.
Yeah. And I mean, I would say do what you can. Obviously, the closer you can get to a more professional standard, the more you're going to get, to an objective
I would suggest,
standard.
at a time, I can see that. But what I would suggest, go to a cupping. There's probably possibly one nearby. And coffee roasters, if not cupping, you don't want to go to that roaster.
So
they should be cupping.
Yeah.
Join them or join a public cupping and just get the feel, I see what you guys are talking about.
Yeah. Are there cuppings in Newburgh, Dad?
We do. Newburgh, our south of Portland, we do one every Friday for half an hour. It's free, doesn't cost anything because it's so much fun and it's so educational.
What time are your cuppings?
Oh, this is a little ad going on. 9:30.
9:30 at Caravan Coffee.
And you leave
every Friday. Do they have to let you know before they come?
No, just turn up.
Just show up.
You'll be in and it'll be a most exciting time. You'll either hear a Kiwi accent or an Irish accent.
There you go. So I think the takeaways for today is, why are we cupping? And the reason is really we are thinking and discerning about the flavor in the coffee that we're consuming or putting out. And I think that's useful obviously extremely useful for producers of coffee, for farmers even. But it's also, if you enjoy coffee, it's a great way to hone in your skills and also find what you like more and more. So yeah, we are really excited to bring more episodes on cupping. But thank you so much for tuning into the episode and for listening. If you're this far in the episode, again, we always like to thank you because you made it.
Yeah.
And again, we'll throw in a link to the video for this episode so you can see our pretty faces if you think they're pretty. Otherwise, thank you so much. As we always say, feel free to let us know if you got any questions or anything you want us to talk about. But we are excited to bring you some more episodes on cupping and to go from there. Thank you so much.